A blizzard was tearing through Silver Creek when a starving German shepherd mother dragged her trembling puppy into Ethan Ward's lonely mountain cabin. For 8 years, Ethan had shut the world out until the moment those terrified eyes met his, and everything he thought he'd buried came roaring back. He didn't know who she was or who she was running from, but when a predator appeared outside his garage and the storm closed in, Ethan faced an impossible choice: drive them out, or save the only family brave enough to walk into his darkness. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. Snow carved the night into shifting ghosts. The wind screamed down the valley of Silver Creek, scraping against the pines like claws searching for something lost. In this storm, inside a small, cedar-sided cabin tucked between two towering ridges, Ethan Ward stood with his hands braced on the kitchen counter, listening. He had learned to hear danger the way other men heard music. At 45, Ethan was tall and lean, his 6-foot frame shaped by decades of mountain work, yet thinned by years of self-imposed isolation. His face carried sharp angles, high cheekbones, a square jaw darkened by uneven stubble, and those deep, storm-gray eyes that looked like they'd once held hope, but had long since traded it for guilt. His dark brown hair, grown slightly past his collar, brushed the back of his neck. Silver strands lit his temples like frost. Wrapped in his worn, dark brown leather coat and the gray wool scarf he rarely removed even indoors, Ethan looked less like a hermit and more like a man suspended between two worlds, the one he survived and the one he could no longer face. A sound had reached him, soft, irregular wrong. Not the howl of the wind, not the groan of bending timber. A dull, rhythmic thumping from the direction of the garage. Ethan's spine stiffened. Noise meant movement. Movement meant intrusion, and intrusions in his experience ended in loss. His breath fogged the air as he moved through the dim house, his boots silent on the wooden floor. On instinct, he reached for the iron pry bar leaning against the mudroom wall, the same tool he used to split ice from the old well pump. The cold metal steadied him. He had been part of a search and rescue team once, until the winter he failed to bring home a boy he had sworn to find. 8 years later, the memory still cut sharper than any blade. He pushed the garage door open. The fluorescent light sputtered twice before humming to life, painting the concrete room in a weak yellow wash. The cold inside was sharper than outside, a sign that something had forced its way in. Then he saw it. In the far corner between a stack of winter tires and an old aluminum canoe, a pair of amber eyes glowed through the dark. The animal stepped forward, revealing a large German shepherd, though barely recognizable as one. Her coat, black and tan, was tangled with ice mud and patches of raw skin. Her ribs pressed so visibly against her sides that each breath looked painful. One ear was torn, fresh blood staining her cheek. She stood trembling on thin, exhausted legs, yet she positioned her body as a shield. Behind her, something moved. A tiny bundle of fur let out a squeak barely louder than the clicking light, a pup no more than a few weeks old trying to burrow deeper beneath its mother's chest. Ethan's grip tightened instinctively. "Get out," he said. Voice low, steady, the same tone he used on panicked men atop broken ridges. The dog bared her teeth, not in threat, but desperation. Ethan raised the bar slightly, not to strike, but to keep distance. He should chase them away. Injured animals were dangerous. Starving animals were unpredictable. And yet, the dog did something unexpected. She didn't attack. She didn't retreat. She simply held his gaze. Amber eyes, bleak and pleading, met his storm-gray ones. And for a moment, brief but bone-deep, Ethan felt something fracture inside him. He'd seen eyes like that before. A freezing ledge, a boy slipping away, a promise he couldn't keep. His chest tightened painfully, the shepherd's legs buckled. She collapsed onto the cold floor with a thud that echoed too loud in the small space. The pup squealed, pressing into her trembling ribs. Ethan stepped forward without thinking. Then a shadow moved outside. Something massive passed the garage opening, quick, heavy, silent. Ethan froze. That wasn't the wind. He shifted toward the narrow gap where snow had blown under the door. A shape, a blur of muscle and tawny fur moved just beyond the threshold. Too large for a coyote, too silent for a wolf. A mountain lion, his instincts whispered, drawn by the scent of blood. The shepherd sensed it too. She forced herself up on shaking legs, planting her body over the pup, bearing what little strength she had left. The pup whimpered, nestling into her chest. Ethan's heartbeat hammered in his ears. His survival instincts screamed one thing. His conscience whispered another. For 8 years he had run from the world, from anything that needed saving. But now in this storm, something helpless had walked straight into his life, into his garage, as if the mountains themselves had dragged it there. The shadow outside paused. A low, rumbling growl vibrated against the storm. Ethan raised the pry bar, the weight steadier in his hands now, not from fear, but from choice. He wasn't sure if he was protecting the dog from the world or the world from the dog, but something inside him had shifted. The shepherd trembled violently. The pup, small, dark-coated with paws far too big for its fragile body, pressed closer, releasing a tiny, uncertain whine. Ethan stepped fully between them and the half-open door. The storm roared. The shadow circled. The shepherd's breath rasped shallow. Ethan tightened his grip, his eyes fixed on the darkness outside. "Easy," he murmured, not sure whether he was speaking to the dog or to himself. The mountain lion's silhouette flickered once more, then vanished into the blizzard. Ethan exhaled slowly, but the air still felt thin. Behind him, the shepherd whimpered softly. The pup let out another small cry. Ethan lowered the pry bar. His pulse thundered. He turned back toward the trembling dog and the tiny pup beneath her. Snow hissed against the garage door. The storm pressed hard as if demanding entry. And somewhere deep inside those roaring winds, Ethan felt a shift like fate leaning forward. The dog stared up at him. He stared back. The pup squeaked once more. Ethan stepped closer. The lights flickered. Then outside that massive shadow swept past the door again, closer this time. Too close. Ethan's breath caught. His knuckles whitened around the pry bar. The shepherd braced weakly. The pup whimpered. And Ethan's heart, pounding in the cold, wondered a single chilling question. What exactly was hunting them in the white night of Silver Creek? Morning crawled over Silver Creek in a pale wash of blue, the storm easing into a slow, exhausted breath. Ethan Ward stood at the broken garage door, boots sunk in the powder, staring at the tracks left by the beast that had circled them through the night. The prints were broad, heavy, unmistakable. A mountain lion, a big one. He exhaled his breath, turning to steam, and glanced back at the two trembling shapes behind him. The German shepherd mother lay curled around her pup ribs, rising in uneven rhythms. The pup, tiny black furred paws too large for its fragile body, suckled weakly, unaware of how close death had brushed against them in the darkness. Ethan's chest tightened. The last time he had looked down at a creature fighting for breath, it had been on a ridge of broken shale 8 winters ago. A teenager trapped beneath a collapsed ledge while Ethan dug through ice with bloody hands. A rescue he never finished. A life he never returned. The weight of that moment lived behind Ethan's storm-gray eyes every dawn, and this morning was no different, except now 2 more lives hung in his hands. He knelt beside the shepherd. slowly letting her see every movement. "Easy girl," he murmured, voice gravel thick from a night without sleep. The dog growled not from aggression, but fear. Her whole body wound tight like a frayed wire. Her amber eyes flicked between Ethan, Scout, and the snowy doorway, expecting danger with every breath. Ethan noticed something then. Her left hind leg was stiff, swollen, twisted wrong, not fresh, but the kind of injury left untreated for weeks. "That's why you ran into my garage," he whispered. "You weren't hunting. You were running." He gathered a blanket from the mudroom and spread it near her, then opened a thermos of warm broth. She sniffed at ears pinned back. The pup, still nameless, gave a tiny squeak. Ethan dipped 2 fingers in the broth and held them toward her. The shepherd hesitated, then licked once, trembling. "Good," Ethan whispered. "You're fighting." It took nearly 10 minutes for the dog to trust the bowl enough to drink on her own. As she ate, Ethan studied the scars beneath her fur, thin parallel lines around her neck, faint rope burns on her chest, and a larger welt above her shoulder blade in the shape of something blunt and cruel. These weren't wounds from wild animals. They were man-made, painful, repeated. His jaw clenched, the muscles in his cheek twitching beneath rough stubble. He had seen cruelty like this during his SAR years, dogs used for illegal fighting rings, training camps that broke them down before building them into weapons. He reached out his hand, hovering above her torn ear. "What did they do to you?" The shepherd tensed, but didn't pull away. The pup crawled onto Ethan's boot, warm and trembling. Something inside him cracked quietly like ice splitting beneath fresh snow. When the sun was high enough to cut the morning gloom, Ethan carried the mother and pup into the cabin, setting them by the wood stove. He wrapped her leg gently with a clean cloth, his hand steady from practice, but shaking inside with fear of failing again. She flinched once, then settled, trusting him more than she trusted the silence of the outside world. Hours passed. The cabin warmed. The wind softened its assault. Ethan sat on the floor, back against his leather armchair, watching the shepherd sleep. Maya. The name came to him unexpectedly, carried on a memory of an old SAR instructor who believed names had power, that naming a survivor meant guiding them back into the world. "Maya," he murmured. The dog's ear twitched, accepting the identity as if she had been waiting for one. The pup butted its head into Ethan's shin. "And you," he said, with a faint, rusty smile. "Must be Scout." Scout wagged his stub of a tail once decisively. Later that night, the cracks in Ethan's armor returned. He tossed in his bed, breathing sharp, shallow as the old memory clawed through his sleep. Snow. Screams through radio static, the boy slipping. Ethan's own glove torn as he tried to hold on. "No, don't," he choked. But the storm from 8 years ago pulled him under again, drowning him in guilt he never outran. A weight pressed against his chest. Warm. Solid. Maya. She had risen from her place near the stove and climbed gently onto the rug beside him, nudging her head beneath his chin. Her breath was hot and steady. Scout curled against Ethan's ribs, a tiny, trembling spark of life. Ethan's breathing slowed, his hands unclenched. The nightmare loosened its grip. And for the first time in years, Ethan did not wake alone. Morning brought an unexpected knock on the door. Ethan stiffened. Visitors were rare up the mountain. He opened the door to find Deputy Reed, a man in his early 50s with the build of an aging linebacker, broad shoulders, thick neck, and a face weathered into deep creases from decades of Montana winters. His beard was a salt and pepper sweep, trimmed neat but rugged, and his brown eyes were sharp with the vigilance of someone who'd seen both wildlife dangers and human ones. Reed had always been fair, calm, and patient, a man who dealt with chaos by grounding others. Rumor said he once lost a partner in a logging accident 15 years ago, a grief that made him fiercely protective of the people in his district. Morning Ethan Reed said snow dusting the brim of his hat. Saw lion tracks. Wanted to check you weren't eaten. Ethan managed half a smile. Not today. Reed glanced past him into the cabin and froze. His eyes locked onto Maya's injured frame, and Scout curled at her belly. Ethan saw the flicker of instinct of duty tighten Reed's jaw. That shepherd? Where'd you find her? Ethan hesitated. Maya's ear twitched nervously behind him. She found me. Reed stepped inside, lowering his voice. Ethan, listen. There's been talk in town. Rumors of a shepherd that escaped a training compound out near Cody. Illegal stuff. Not pretty. The owner's been asking around, real interested in getting her back. Ethan's pulse thudded, once heavy. He looked at Maya, thin, wounded eyes haunted. A creature who had walked into his storm not by accident, but by desperation. You think she's his? Ethan asked quietly. Reed shrugged his massive shoulders. Don't know. But if she is, that man won't stop. Ethan's eyes darkened, storm gray, turning to steel. Then he'll have to go through me. For a moment, Reed studied him, this 45-year-old man with the worn leather coat flannel shirt, gray scarf, and haunted eyes. A man who had lost everything but still stepped forward when something weaker needed him. Reed nodded once, respectful. Just be careful, Ethan. When the door closed, Ethan returned to Maya and Scout. Maya lifted her head, watching him with amber eyes that held both fear and hope. He knelt beside her, resting a hand gently over her paw. You're safe here, he whispered. Whatever you ran from, it won't take you again. Outside, the storm had passed. Inside, the first fragile thread of a new bond had been tied between a broken man, a wounded mother, and a pup who didn't yet know the world had tried to kill him. Morning sun glimmered faintly through a veil of thin winter clouds, casting Silver Creek in a pale, fragile light. It was the kind of light that made the world look calm from afar, yet hid the dangers beneath its frozen surfaces. Ethan Ward stepped off his porch scarf, pulled high against the cold, watching Maya and Scout sniff the air as if reading invisible messages written by the forest. Maya was recovering remarkably fast, her stride still stiff, but her posture alert, protective, almost regal. Scout, now more confident, bounded through snowbanks, with oversized paws, stumbling and recovering with the stubborn energy of a pup, determined to keep up with the world. Ethan felt an unexpected warmth watching them. It had been years since something alive depended on him, and longer still since he allowed anyone, human or animal, to stay this close. But the stillness of morning shattered when Maya suddenly froze. Ears pricked forward, body rigid. Ethan immediately recognized the stance. That wasn't curiosity. That was alarm. What is it, girl? He whispered. She answered by bolting toward the tree line, Scout scrambling behind her. Ethan sprinted after them, boots crunching hard into the snow. For a brief second, panic clawed at him, fear that Maya was running from something, or worse, toward something. The trail bent toward the lower basin, where Silver Creek Lake sat frozen beneath a crust of early winter ice. Maya skidded to a stop at the lake's edge, barking sharply, echoing off the silent pines. At first, Ethan saw nothing. Then he heard it, a scream thin, sharp, muffled by the ice. He dropped to his knees. Help somebody. The voice was young, terrified. Beneath the translucent sheet of ice 20 feet from shore, he saw movement, a boy. His arms flailed weakly as he struggled to keep his head above the slush-filled cavity where the ice had collapsed. Panic surged through Ethan's veins. The boy couldn't be older than 13. A backpack floated beside him, slowly sinking. Maya barked again, pacing the shoreline, nose low, reading the air. Scout whimpered at her side, sensing danger. Ethan forced his breath to steady. Okay. Okay, he murmured, scanning the area for any object sturdy enough to bear weight. On the far side of the clearing sat an abandoned fishing sled, half buried under snow. He sprinted to it, yanked it free, and slid it across the ice. "Maya," he barked. Her ears snapped back toward him. "Guide me." She seemed to understand. With cautious steps, Maya walked the perimeter of the lake, nose brushing the ice, mapping for weak spots. She turned sharply left toward a slightly thicker patch. Ethan followed her path, exactly the sled scraping behind him. The boy's cries grew weaker, each one slicing through Ethan's chest like a blade. Suddenly, Ethan was back on that ridge 8 years ago. The storm. The ice. The boy's fingers slipping from his hand, the ledge giving way. Not again. Not this time. This. He shoved the memory aside and focused on the living child before him. As he crawled across the ice, he finally saw the boy clearly pale face, freckles, short brown hair frozen to his forehead, wide hazel eyes filled with terror. He wore a puffy blue jacket, several sizes too big for him, now soaked and dragging him under. "Hold on, kid, I'm coming," Ethan shouted. I can't," the boy stuttered through chattering teeth. Maya barked sharply, as if commanding him to keep going. Ethan reached the edge of the broken ice and extended the sled. "Grab on." The boy kicked weakly, fingers blue as he latched onto the plastic rim. The ice groaned beneath Ethan's knees. He gritted his teeth, pulling hand over hand, his breath burning in his lungs, as the boy slid onto the sled, coughing, gasping. Scout barked wildly, tail tucked, skittering around the shore in distress. When Ethan finally reached solid ice, Maya pressed her head against the boy's cheek, as if checking for life. Ethan scooped the boy into his arms. He weighed almost nothing limp from cold and fear. "What's your name?" Ethan asked urgently. "Evan," he whispered. "Evan Brooks." Evan's voice broke his teeth, clattering. I just wanted to take pictures. The snow. I didn't see the crack." Ethan tightened his grip, remembering how guilt once lived in the voice of every survivor he had rescued. "You're okay now," he murmured. "I've got you." Evan looked at him through frozen lashes, studying the gaunt man with the worn leather coat flannel shirt and haunted gray eyes. You came fast." Ethan glanced at Maya and Scout. "They led me." Back at the cabin, Ethan wrapped Evan in blankets near the stove, while Maya hovered protectively, nudging Evan's arm, licking his numb fingers. Scout curled into Evan's side, lending warmth through his tiny body. When Evan's shivering finally eased, Ethan called the local sheriff's office. Deputy Reed arrived 20 minutes later, boots stomping snow from the porch. He knelt beside Evan, examining him with the care of someone raised on mountain winters. "Lucky kid," Reed muttered. "Another 5 minutes and—" He didn't finish the sentence. Evan's mother, a slender woman named Laura Brooks, mid-30s, sandy blonde hair tied in a messy bun, skin pale from worry, arrived soon after. Her face was streaked with tears, and though she spoke softly, her voice carried the trembling weight of a parent who almost lost everything. "Thank you," she whispered to Ethan, gripping his arm with shaking hands. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't—" Ethan shook his head. "It wasn't me." His eyes rested on Maya, who lay watchfully at Evan's feet, her expression calm, purposeful, almost proud. She found him. Laura glanced at the defiant, scarred shepherd and swallowed hard. She looked so gentle." Ethan didn't respond. He simply knelt beside Maya, brushing her fur gently. Later that evening, after Evan and Laura left with Reed, Ethan sat in silence by the fire. Scout slept belly up beside him, twitching in puppy dreams. Maya rested with her head on Ethan's boot, breathing steady. But Ethan's thoughts weren't steady at all. Maya's instincts were uncanny, precise, sharp, the instincts of a trained search and rescue dog. Or worse, a trained fighter. Her scars were no accident. Her discipline was not natural. Someone had shaped her through pain. Someone who might now be searching. And thanks to Evan telling everyone who saved him, word would spread. Maya's name wasn't known yet, but a large German shepherd with a torn ear would be enough for the wrong person. Ethan stared into the fire, jaw tight. This rescue had saved a boy, but it had also sent a signal out into the world. A beacon he couldn't control. "We'll handle it," he whispered, running a hand down Maya's back. "Whatever comes." Maya lifted her head and nuzzled his palm, sealing a silent pact between them. Evening settled over Silver Creek in a bruised shade of violet, the air tense with the promise of another storm. Ethan Ward stood on his porch, rubbing Maya's ear as Scout gnawed on a stick near his boots. For a rare moment, peace felt possible. But Maya kept glancing toward the tree line, uneasy, as if something old and terrible had awakened in the forest. Ethan sensed it too, the way the valley held its breath, the way the wind seemed to whisper through the pines rather than blow through them. Animals understood danger before humans. And Maya had lived it. When headlights flickered through the trees, Ethan stiffened. Few people took the winding mountain road at dusk. The truck rolled to a stop in the clearing engine, rumbling low like some great animal preparing to strike. A man stepped out. He was in his late 30s, tall, but with a thuggish heaviness in his shoulders, the kind built from ego rather than discipline. His face was broad and coarse jaw, shadowed with a dark-trimmed beard that failed to soften the cruelty etched into the lines around his mouth. His eyes were a cold, metallic blue, sharp, calculating void of warmth. His hair was ash blonde, buzzed short to hide an old scar on his temple, a reminder of the kind of life he lived. His jacket was black leather, expensive, but worn in all the wrong places, and he carried himself like someone used to controlling others by force rather than reason. Ethan knew instantly this was Travis Nolan. The way Maya reacted confirmed it. She stiffened so violently, her entire body trembled, tail tucked tightly, fur rising along her spine. Scout darted behind Ethan's leg with a frightened squeak. Ethan's hand instinctively rested on Maya's shoulder as Travis approached with a smirk that made Ethan's stomach tighten with instant dislike. "Evening," Travis drawled. His voice was too smooth, like oil across gravel slick on the surface, but hiding sharpness beneath. Ethan didn't respond. Travis's gaze slid past him, locking onto Maya. A sick kind of satisfaction glinted in his eyes. "There she is," he muttered. "Knew she'd run somewhere soft." Ethan stepped into his line of sight. "State your business," Travis chuckled. "Straight to it, huh?" He spread his hands as if announcing a harmless performance. "She's mine. The dog. She bolted from my training yard months ago. I've been tracking her ever since." Ethan studied him, expression cold. "The scars on her body say she's better off gone." Travis's smile faltered, then sharpened. "You have no idea what that dog is worth, or what she's trained to do. She belongs to me." Maya lowered herself, ears, flat eyes wide in terror. She pressed her muzzle into Ethan's knee, something she had never done even during nightmares. Ethan swallowed hard. That tiny gesture said more than words ever could. Travis stepped forward. "Call her over. She's not going anywhere with you." Travis's lips curled. "I wasn't asking." The tension snapped. Travis lunged. Ethan blocked the swing of Travis's arm, the impact jarring up his forearm. Travis moved with the vicious confidence of a man who had hurt many and learned little. Ethan, though leaner, was stronger in ways Travis wasn't. Strength, carved from loss, guilt, and years of hauling wood up mountainsides alone. They locked boots, grinding into the snow. Travis shoved him backward, spitting curses. Maya exploded into motion, placing herself between them, barking with a savage, protective fury Ethan had never heard from her. Travis reached inside his coat. A flash of metal. Ethan reacted instantly, knocking Travis's wrist aside as he pulled out a long, curved hunting knife. The blade sliced air inches from Ethan's ribs. Travis snarled, "Move, or I'll put both you and that mutt down." Maya lunged, raw instinct, not training, with teeth aimed at Travis's arm. Travis jerked back in surprise, losing balance, crashing into the porch rail. Maya's jaws clamped on his coat, ripping leather, just missing flesh. Travis screamed, swinging the knife wildly, nearly striking Maya. "Stop!" Ethan roared, grabbing Travis's arm with both hands, wrestling the blade downward. Snow flew around them in violent bursts. Travis elbowed Ethan hard in the ribs. Pain shot through Ethan's side, but he refused to let go. The world narrowed to instinct and survival. Then Ethan, a voice, shouted. Ethan looked up in surprise and saw a small figure sprinting across the snowy yard. Evan Brooks. The boy was breathless, cheeks flushed, still wearing his oversized winter jacket. Behind him, Deputy Reed's sheriff truck skidded into the clearing. Reed jumped out, boots slamming into the snow. "Drop the weapon," he bellowed. Travis froze, knife still in hand, chest heaving. Reed drew his gun in one smooth, practiced motion. "I said, drop it!" Travis's metallic eyes darted between Ethan, Maya, and the gun pointed at him. His smirk returned, but this time it was bitter forced. He released the knife. It hit the snow with a muted thud. Reed crossed the distance in 4 strides, grabbed Travis, shoved him face first into the snow, cuffed him, and hauled him to his feet. "Breaking and entering attempted assault, weapon misconduct," Reed growled. "You're done, Nolan?" Travis spat at the ground near Ethan's boot. "This isn't over. She's mine. You can't hide her forever." Reed shoved him toward the truck, but the damage was already done. Maya, shaking violently, backed away from everyone. Her eyes were wide, glassy. She whimpered a sound Ethan had never heard from her, then spun and bolted into the trees, Scout yelping and chasing after her. Maya, Ethan shouted, tearing free from Reed's attempt to steady him. He sprinted into the storm forming across the ridge, his leather coat flapping open, his gray scarf whipping in the wind. But Maya was faster than fear, faster than memory. Within seconds, she vanished into the white wilderness. Ethan stood breathless at the forest's edge, panic tearing through him. He had lost someone once in a storm. He would not lose Maya. Not again. Snow drifted through the dawn like pale ashes shaken from a dying fire coating Silver Creek in a cold, fragile silence. Ethan Ward pushed through the heavy wind boots, sinking with each step, his breath burning his lungs as he climbed the ridge. His brown leather coat was crusted in frost scarf, stiff from the night's blizzard. He had searched for hours, the storm shredding his voice and stealing every trace of Maya's scent. But he kept going, driven by a fear that choked him harder than the cold. Scout trotted beside him, barely more than a shadow against the snow. The pup's small body shivered with exhaustion, but each time Ethan slowed, Scout barked sharply and pushed forward, insisting they keep searching. Ethan placed a trembling palm on the young dog's back. "We'll find her," he murmured, though doubt twisted like barbed wire inside him. He had lost someone once. He would not lose Maya. Not again. The ridge bent toward a narrow ledge overlooking a ravine where the storm had sculpted the world into jagged white chasms. Ethan scanned the drop, his eyes sharp but strained with worry, the wind whipping his dark shoulder-length hair across his face. A Labrador-nosed dog would struggle in this wind, a grieving man even more so. Then Scout barked, not playfully, not fearfully, a sharp, urgent note. Ethan followed the pup's gaze. At the far edge of the ridge, half buried in snow, A dark mound lay slumped against a dead pine, a shape too still, too quiet. Maya. Ethan breathed, his heart thundering as he stumbled toward her. Maya didn't move. Her fur black-brown and cold with ice was stiffened by the night's frost. Her breaths came in shallow whispers, each one trembling like a candle about to gut her out. She wasn't injured, only frozen, exhausted, terrified enough to run until her body betrayed her. Ethan dropped to his knees beside her, snow soaking instantly into his jeans. He didn't reach for her collar, didn't give commands, didn't try to grab her like Travis had. He simply sat in the snow, pulling off his gloves, offering his bare, shaking hands. His voice cracked open like a wound. Maya, I'm here. Her eyelids fluttered, as if hearing the echo of a dream she had once trusted. Ethan lowered his head forehead, brushing her cold muzzle. No orders, he whispered. No pressure. Just come home with me. Maya's body trembled, not from cold, she had shivered worse before, but from fear that still lived inside her like an old wound. Ethan swallowed hard. You didn't run from me, he said, voice low. You ran from the past. The wind whistled through the pines, a solemn witness. Slowly, painfully, Maya lifted her head. Her amber eyes met Ethan's gray ones, eyes full of storms and regrets, and a fragile hope that neither could voice. She leaned forward, pressing her weight into him, her head tucking beneath his chin. Ethan closed his eyes, a rough breath leaving him. Relief struck him so hard it nearly knocked him backward. Good girl, he whispered, voice breaking. Let's go home. Scout yipped, bounding in frantic circles, tail wagging so fast it blurred, joyful, relieved, unable to contain the happiness thrumming through his small body. Ethan scooped Maya into his arms, not because she was weak, but because he needed to hold her, needed the solidness of her heartbeat against his chest. The climb back was hard, but Ethan didn't care. He carried her as if she were the only precious thing in the world. In many ways, she was. Back at the cabin, Deputy Reed waited on the porch, arms folded his tall frame, wrapped in a thick sheriff jacket. His tired, rugged face softened the moment he saw Maya alive. Thank God, Reed muttered. We were about to bring in search and rescue. Ethan shook his head gently. No team would have found her. Scout did. The pup puffed up proudly, though his legs wobbled. Reed crouched and scratched his ears. Little hero, huh, beyond Reed. A woman stood near the woodpile, Sarah Jenkins, the town's only vet tech. Sarah was in her late 50s, tall and thin, with a long gray braid, and a face half stern, half motherly. The kind of woman who could scold you for letting frostbite set in, and then hand you a bowl of stew without pausing for breath. Let me inside, she snapped, not waiting for permission. She needs warmth and fluids. Ethan didn't argue. He carried Maya in, laying her on the flannel blanket beside the stove. Sarah knelt and examined Maya with expert hands. Dehydrated, overexerted, scared out of her soul, she muttered. But she'll live. Ethan nearly collapsed with relief. Sarah glanced up at him, eyes softening. You two have a strange bond, she said. Stronger than fear. That's rare. He didn't answer, didn't trust himself to. Hours passed in a hush, broken only by firelight crackling and Scout's soft sighs as he curled beside Maya. When Maya finally lifted her head, Ethan reached out. She pressed her nose into his palm. It wasn't a gesture of surrender. It was acceptance. Trust, belonging. Deputy Reed returned the next morning with paperwork. Since Travis is facing charges, he said the county's clearing all claims of ownership. He set the papers on the table. If you want her and the pup, they're yours now. Legally. Ethan stared at the documents. For most men, it was bureaucracy. For him, it felt like destiny. He signed. Maya watched the pen move, tail thumping once. Scout barked proudly, and in that small, warm cabin Ethan felt something shift inside him, something heavy loosening, something bright taking root. In the months that followed, Ethan and Maya trained together. Not formally, not in any harsh, regimented way. But Maya had the instincts of a search and rescue dog, and Ethan had the soul of a man who once saved others before losing himself. Together they helped on missing person calls, wilderness searches, lost hikers. Maya worked not as a full-time K9, but as Ethan called it, a guardian of the valley. And Ethan, he healed. Slowly at first, then all at once. One crisp autumn morning, Ethan stood at the ridge where he had found Maya. She sat beside him, Scout at her flank, surveying the valley like the leader she had become. Ethan rested a hand on her head. "Funny thing," he murmured. "I thought I saved you." Maya leaned into him, warm and steady. The wind rolled softly across Silver Creek as if carrying the truth he finally understood. She had saved him too. In the quiet corners of our lives, God often sends his miracles not as thunder or lightning, but as a loyal companion who walks beside us when the world feels cold. Ethan and Maya remind us that healing comes when we open the door to love, even when we're afraid. If this story touched your heart, please share it, leave a comment, and subscribe for more stories of grace and hope. May God bless your home, strengthen your spirit, and surround you with faithful souls who never leave your side. Amen.